Hi there. Big news. I got a boom mic, or rather a boom arm for my mic. This is actually pretty important because now my videos won't sound like shit because my microphone isn't always like a good foot away from my mouth on the table. It's actually pretty close to my mouth, so the sound will actually be quite good this time. So you might be wondering, Loeko, don't you usually upload a top 20 ranking at the start of each season? What's this song of interest video you're doing? That's a great question. I'm honestly not exactly sure what it is yet, but I wanted to try something different. If you're involved within this music chart watching community, you've probably seen people express their disdain for the Billboard charts in some form. There's multiple reasons for this, which I could spend all days trying to explain, but basically it boils down to their flawed methodology for calculating their metrics. The problem mostly comes down to their emphasis on radio airplay, resulting in some songs that do super well on the radio and nowhere else performing super well on the charts, while songs that do well in streaming and sales but have no radio support go nowhere. This becomes a problem, especially when you remember that Radio Payola is still very much alive and well. Even outside of Billboard's own problems, I feel like I'm starting to outgrow the seasonal top 20 ranking format. It was great for helping me keep track with popular music on a regular basis without needing to do too much research, but now that I feel more confident in finding out what songs are becoming big, I feel like this format just isn't enough for me anymore. My main issue with this format is that because I only cover a single week's top 20 each season, I often either miss out on songs completely, or I end up not talking about certain songs until long after they've peaked in popularity, because they hit the top 20 outside the weeks I covered. I didn't talk about Watermelon Sugar until the start of fall last year. There's also other issues, like how I almost always have to talk about certain songs over and over again, but after a while I decided that it was finally time to bite the bullet and figure out how I can improve the format while still maintaining my goal of keeping up with popular music. Several of my quote-unquote music critic peers found their own ways of retooling their format to fit their needs and goals. Sean Fay Wolf of Diamond X Studios is now ranking the Rolling Stones charts, which focus on streaming and sales. Cyril Panda is reviewing newly charting songs in the Billboard monthly series. Lizette G is generally talking about new charting songs that entered their radar in the last 3 months. Hell, King of the Void even started running their own chart with a fair methodology. As for what I'm gonna do, I'm basically gonna do something very similar to Lizette G's strategy, but I'm gonna be a little more liberal with it. Basically, I'm gonna look through songs that are charting on either the Billboard Hot 100, the Rolling Stone Top 100, or Spotify's daily and weekly US charts, and finding songs that I personally deem to be popular enough to become hits. This is far from the most scientific way to figure it out, but as we've all seen by this point, the act of figuring out the best methodology to assess the popularity of music is so difficult that it's basically impossible. Like, how do you even define what a hit is? Do you have to discriminate by demographics? Because I'm pretty sure moms all over the US are still buying the Greatest Showman soundtrack like it's the Beatles in the 60s. In any case, I'm basically playing it by ear so that I can ensure that I talk about the music that I feel deserves to be talked about in the context of hit songs. One thing to note is that while I'll likely keep this as a seasonal series, I don't want to be super strict about sticking to the schedule either. I want to use this series as a way to discuss the feelings I have for whatever songs are popular at the time, and if I stick to a specific schedule, I might either be really late on songs that become hits right after my last video, or I might have videos where I don't have a lot to discuss because the months prior didn't give me much material to work with. So basically, long story short, this series is effectively going to be a replacement for my top 20 ranking series, where I pick popular hit songs on my radar and analyze them. I'm not going to be ranking the songs in these videos, and the frequency of these videos will really depend on whether or not I feel the need to make them. My hope for this series is that I'll be able to focus on keeping up with and analyzing the popular music as best as I can. Though if you're still curious about my thoughts on the Billboard Top 20, I'll still leave them at the end of each Songs of Interest video. This is mainly to attract viewers, but I guess it might be a nice add-on for y'all too. Okay, I'm done with my preamble now. Let's take a look at our Songs of Interest.
I saw you dancing in a crowded room. You look so happy when I'm not with you.
Fun fact, this is actually one of my least favorite tracks from After Hours, and I'm honestly kinda surprised that The Weeknd pushed this as a single, let alone that it became an actual hit when his previous attempts at getting non-Blinding Lights hits failed. I'm not really sure how to make sense of this as a hit. Most of Abel's hits until now have been either huge monuments of pop like Blinding Lights or Can't Feel My Face, or dark evocative experiences like The Hills. I guess the closest thing I can compare this to is I Feel It Coming, but that song was a hit because it was a disco throwback where he sounded exactly like Michael Jackson, not to mention that it was brought to life by Daft Punk, May They Travel the Cosmos Forever. Save Your Tears is this mellow, vibey song that's kinda synth pop. It's got the synths and the bass line, and it's even got a driving acoustic guitar for good measure. But compared to the rest of the album, and especially the singles, this is really low key, and I'm quite surprised that this is what people gravitated to. Don't get me wrong though, Save Your Tears is still really good. I'm not sure how many people can really experience this right now, but this song really hits different when you're driving down the highway. At any time, but especially at night.
Save your tears for another day.
Something about that acoustic guitar in particular just screams streetlights passing by you as they illuminate the road to me. The lyrical content is definitely very much able too. Save Your Tears is sort of the midpoint of the second half of the album, where he's given up trying to cope healthily with the loss of his relationship. He's confronted by either the person he originally broke up with, or possibly another person that he's hurt before, and he's sort of taken out of this state of blind hedonism and confronted with the lucidity of his actions, acknowledging the situation but deciding to push it to the side so that he can continue down this path of eventual self-destruction. Honestly, it's still a little hard for me to parse out the situation in these lyrics, but I definitely get the vibe, and it adds a lot to After Hours as an experience. I still don't entirely understand this as a single, but I wouldn't complain if it comes on, especially if it's on a road.
Now suddenly you're asking for it back. Could you tell me where'd you get the nerve?
It would be really easy for me to call this a Billie Eilish ripoff and call it a day, and while that kinda is what it is, it would be such a vapid response to the song that I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I stooped that low. This song isn't all that bad, honestly. It's not fantastic, like I feel like the production style doesn't really match the composition. Why is it that the music is produced to have minimal verses that build up to a huge drop-like chorus, when the song itself was clearly written to have the focus on the verses rather than the chorus? A drop shouldn't only last 2 bars, you know? That said, it doesn't sound awful, and the song is definitely pretty well written. It paints a detailed portrait of her encounter with this person who broke her heart and is now crawling back to her now that he needs her. It's not a new or unique premise for a song by any means, but there's enough detail and emotional weight in her writing that makes the song quite effective. I don't really see myself returning to this one much, but I do recommend checking out this other song of hers.
And I got this rubber band on my wrist, and I snap it every time that I think about your lips.
I'm glad that she's got this under her belt, because I'd hate to remember her as Billie's copycat. You know how she feels about copycats.
Whooped it, bitch, I'm outside of some movie. Blue cheese, I swear I'm addicted to blue cheese. I gotta stick to this paper like blue sleep.
Not gonna lie, I really wish I could have learned about drill music earlier, because I feel woefully unequipped to talk about this outside of the context of Pop Smoke. I feel like I should have more to say about it outside of that, especially since I saw quite a few people really like this one, and especially since I'm half Indian and this song samples a recent Bollywood movie's soundtrack.
Get the breeze, then it's adios. If I'm with your trees, then she give it though. When I see police, then we gang low. That's another piece, that's another zone.
I've got literally nothing on this one though. It's solid and all, but I quite literally have nothing to say about Whoopty or CJ himself. I like this part though.
Swagged out.
That goes hard. I love that.
I came from nothing, I had to go get it, I had to finesse up the gang with. I done did everything for the niggas that I love who stuck in the chain gang.
Initially I was planning on talking about Back in Blood instead of this, but all I really had to say about that one is that Lil Durk blows Pooh Shiesty out of the fucking water, and Finesse out of the Gangway blows Back in Blood out of the water, so I might as well talk about this instead. I already liked Lil Durk back when I only knew him on Laugh Now Cry Later, but his energy on here is something else. I just love the vibe that he has on here. Something about the tone of his voice and his delivery is so captivating. Like you can really feel his well-deserved pride as he appreciates what he has now, as well as his reflection on all the things he's had to go through in order to get to where he is at the same time. It's great for when you're feeling reflective and melancholic, but it also leans into its bragging rights enough that you can enjoy it as a more serious flex anthem. Also, the transition into Lil Baby's guest verse is one of the best musical moments of this year so far.
Whoever thought I would. Man, I've been trapping since 2007. My mama was struggling, I had to help from juvenile to penitentiary. I'm better, I'm happy I can say I got it together.
Like, holy shit. Lil Baby's voice blends in almost too well with the production, to the point where he feels more like another instrument in the mix rather than his own voice, but somehow he makes that work by heightening the pressure of the song. I can't quite articulate it, and I'm not really sure how long I'll feel this way, but this song is low-key a masterpiece.
Steady calling my phone. I done told you before that it's over, leave me alone. No, it's hurting you to see me gone. Dark clouds, you gon' see me storm.
I haven't really kept up with what Lil TJ's been up to since Pop Out from 2019, but between this and Mood Swings, I wouldn't complain at all if he pivoted completely to R&B, because this is some good shit. This is beautiful. Lil TJ isn't exactly the first person I'd think of to make a fantastic R&B song, but he's almost like Roddy Ricch in that he has this knack for melodic flows that blends really well with dark, gentle production like this. He also has this vulnerability to his voice that allows him to sell the angst and melancholy of his words beautifully. Also, it's really cool to see Black finally appear on a real hit song.
I ain't tryna play no games, my love. I'm one of a kind, couldn't fake my love. Earthquake makes some shake, my love. Most of them can't even relate, my love.
He's one of those guys that I've always been aware about but never really knew anything about, and while this song doesn't really change that, he's just as good on this as I've always heard he is, so good for him, I guess.
Get like this every time. On these days that feel like you and me.
God, this guy's a heartthrob. He's got such a rich and unique voice, and he's got the kind of charisma that'll endear you to him even if he's narrating the point of view of a pathetic, clingy man that can't let go, and not to mention, he is cute as hell. As for the song itself, it's a vibe, but I don't think I'm gonna revisit it much for the time being. I'm hoping that Giveon has more up his sleeve, cause I think he's got some potential. Cardi's officially back, baby. Honestly, I wasn't entirely sure if WAP would have marked her return to glory, since it sort of felt like its own phenomenon, and it was largely Megan's moment as much as it was Cardi's as well. But Up is so goddamn good that I'm convinced that she's here to stay. The momentum of it is insane. This beat is so bouncy and infectious, and its tempo is just right, perfectly fast, but not so fast that the song feels rushed. Cardi's performance is just as full of personality, charisma, and command of the song's flows as you'd always expect from her, and god do I love that chanting.
Boys don't deserve no pussy. I know that's right.
There's nothing super remarkable or envelope pushing about Up, unlike what you could say about WAP, but somehow this is the song that got me completely back on board with Cardi after a solid year and a half of mediocre releases. I've got high hopes for that next album.
Real hot girl shit. Lay on my stomach, toot it up, do the cry, baby. Look back, hold it open, now he annihilated. Moaning like a bitch when he hit this pussy. Damn, he probably wanna wear my hood.
Y'all are so fucking weak. I get that baby samples are really distracting, especially when they're in sex jams. I mean, I've heard she knows. But this isn't nearly as bad as that. Firstly, this sample doesn't even sound like a goddamn baby.
Real hot girl shit.
DA got that dope.
But more importantly, Megan and DaBaby are electric on this song. I don't know what it is about these two when they collaborate, but they always seem to bring out the best out of each other when they join forces. Both of them are obviously really competent rappers, but they also have this strong sense of humor and the ability to not take themselves too seriously. So when they come together, it's always so much fun to watch them show off their absolute titanic presences while also having so much fun at the same time. Crybaby is kinda like their last big collaboration, Cash Shit, except this time they're laser focused on just how much they fuck. They fuck so much. They're so good at it. They fuck so many people and they're so good at it that it's making the family and friends of their flings hate them. They're practically cartoon villains on the run, and this is their villain theme song about how devilishly good they are at sex. It's so much goddamn fun. I think the best part about Crybaby is how their flows feel so candid when they're rapping about how they fuck. It's something I've never really seen done before, at least not this well, especially when I got to the cheeks clapping.
I thought I was in trouble, how you tearing them cheeks up. Keep me a freak, who the flavor of the week. If I make up the rules, then I don't think it's cheating.
It's almost like really good acting. Their energy makes it feel like you're listening to them rap while they're in the middle of sex, and I swear to god, that's a compliment. It's just this barrage of overloading bars that just assault your senses with how much they're fucking, and it's just such a fun and exciting experience, you know? I'm still holding on to hope that Megan will eventually push Freaky Girls as a single, but until then, I'll be completely occupied with this. That intro puts me in a goddamn trance every single time it comes on. It's dark, it's sexy, it's intimidating. It's like the sonic equivalent of driving into an underground tunnel. I can literally feel reality shift when the beat drops. I can feel everything turn black and red. I can feel the world go into slow motion. Everything else I could possibly say about the song would feel so secondary when those bass synths wrap me up like a snake about to devour me, though there's definitely more to this song than just a fantastic beat. For one, I can finally rejoice, because this is Doja Cat's first major hit song, aside from Boss Bitch if you don't count that for some reason, that wasn't produced by Dr. Luke. Nope, not even a dumb Tyson Trax credit. You could argue that he'd still profit from the song since Doja signed to his label and all, but I've been looking for an excuse to enjoy a Doja Cat song ever since she made it big. Just let me have this one, please. And speaking of Doja, she's the perfect complement to this beat.
Baby, we tried to fight it. We all been there some days. Thought I needed something else and acted like I was okay.
chorus is just barely melodic enough to justify how long it is, but her first verse is just the best. It's such a perfect, immaculate blend of sensuality, tension, and dramatic stakes that I just get completely transfixed. I'm not entirely sure if the rap verse works though.
Damn, Papa, you a rare breed, no comparing, and it's motherfucking scary. Tryna keep them cause I found them, let a hoe know, I ain't motherfucking sharing.
It's not bad and all, but admittedly, Doja kinda sounds like the guest rapper on her own song. I think it's just the vibe she's going for here. It would be one thing if she tried to stay sensual like the rest of the song, or even if she took a more imposing angle, which still would have kind of fit the beat, but instead she kind of has this quirky Roman-era Nicki Minaj delivery that doesn't really fit the mood. Like, I'm not usually bothered by stylistic choices like this, but when a song is carried by its atmosphere this much, it does kind of start to bother me a little bit. Still though, those are minor nitpicks. This beat is just hypnotizing. What is it with me and looming bass synths? It just works every single time.
Hold up.
Frank,
Headshot.
Frank,
Sit down.
Frank,
Stand up.
Frank.
And talk it up like yeah, and talk it up like yeah. I just wanna look good for you, good for you.
Fuck you and you.
I think I have a problem.
If you rain in your garden, you know that you can. Call me when you want, call me when you need. Call me in the morning, I'll be on the way. Call me when you want, call me when you need. Call me out by your name, I'll be on the way.
Back in 2019, I said I wanted to see more hoe anthems about getting it on with dudes, especially ones from gay guys in hip-hop, and I'm so glad to say that we're finally starting to get them from Lil Nas X. This is honestly quite groundbreaking. Up until very recently, queer artists haven't really been able to exist in mainstream hip-hop, and even today, their queerness is often either brushed under the rug, or the artists are mocked and belittled for it, if not worse. The problem of homophobia in music is obviously not exclusive to hip-hop at all, but because of various socio-political factors within hip-hop and the industry, it manifests itself in specific ways that make it that much harder for queer artists in hip-hop to fully express themselves and find mainstream success through it without sacrificing anything. Of course, I'm not black, so I can't really speak for anybody on this topic. If you want a real perspective on queerness in hip-hop, I really recommend JV Radio Review's video on the topic, as well as his videos in general. Like, seriously, it's an absolute travesty that this guy doesn't have more subscribers than I do. What the fuck am I doing better than he is? Anyway, in the case of Montero, it's so refreshing to see a gay black man being able to express his sexual side like this on such a mainstream level. I feel like we've been so deprived of men being able to express themselves sexually like this, to the point where my subconscious immediately equates men showing off their bodies to porn, even though women have been sexualized out in the open so much that it's been completely normalized. Of course, in the case of women being sexualized, it's often at the expense of their agency, and we as a society have only really very recently started to try and remedy that, but that's a whole other issue. Basically, what I want to say is that as a gay man, especially one that's a person of color as well, it feels so liberating watching Lil Nas X pole dance into hell and grinding on the devil himself and establishing himself as an absolute king. As for the song itself, it's pretty good, I think. Honestly, outside of Old Town Road, a lot of the songs that he's released so far lie in this weird, uncanny valley of music where it's melodic, but not quite melodic enough to be really pleasantly catchy. And I'm not really sure yet if Montero's an exception. It's been growing on me a little as I write this though, so who knows. Either way though, I feel like Lil Nas X is really managing to break down some real barriers here. I'm so glad that he's around.
What you know about rolling down in the deep? When your brain goes numb, you can call that mental freeze. When these people talk too much, put that shit in slow motion. Yeah, I feel like an astronaut in the ocean.
You know, after all the incredible hip-hop and R&B that I've discussed so far, listening to this feels like coming back down to reality and realizing that not everything is perfect in life. This isn't even that bad. Like, it's got a good beat, and this guy's voice is fine, but
put this shit in a frame, better know I don't blame everything that I say. Man, I seen you deflate, let me elevate this in a prank. Have you walking on a plane?
Like, the absolute last thing I need in music these days is another lyrical miracle white rapper getting a hit. It's not even bad in and of itself, it's just...
You cut out a piece of me and now I bleed internally, left here without you, without you.
The presence of the Kid Leroy kind of feels like a throwback to 2018, when teenage boys all over the world simultaneously discovered hip-hop and the ability to express your negative emotions at the same time. Granted, this song is about as much hip-hop as Your Body's a Wonderland, but I'm told that this guy's a rapper, so I guess? Anyway, everything about the song just screams basic, from the banal lyrics about a messy breakup, with the most surface level amount of self-reflection and awareness of the situation, set to an instrumental that's literally just an acoustic guitar and some vague synths in the background to represent strings, playing the most basic, sad chord progression known to the modern Western world. It's popular for a reason, but at least do something interesting with it, at least something more than one extra tension chord. Granted, I don't want to be too harsh on the song or the Kid Leroy, since I understand the appeal of songs like this. It's not really doing any harm, and this guy doesn't seem to be all that bad in real life as far as I'm aware. It's just that this song is just kind of embarrassing is all. While I don't want to dwell on this band's name for too long, I just want to clarify for a particular friend of mine watching this. Yes, this guy named his solo project after US Senator and 2012 presidential candidate Mitt Romney. Personally, I'm just annoyed that he didn't call himself Armany. Anyway, I've seen a lot of disdain for this one, and... okay, I'll talk about my observations, and maybe in the midst of it, I'll talk about how I personally feel about this song.
3 little birds sat on my window, and they told me I don't need to worry.
So if you didn't already know, this is a cover of Corinne Bailey Rae's 2006 song of the same name. It was a hit largely in the UK and Europe, and I'm pretty sure it was also a hit internationally as well, just not really in the Americas. In any case, it's definitely one of the most underrated and beloved hits of the 2000s. A sweet, comforting little song about reassuring yourself that things will be okay, and allowing yourself to relax and turn your mind away from your anxieties. Releasing a cover of a beloved hit song is always going to be a bit of an uphill battle, but Put Your Records On in particular is a tricky song to cover for one very particular reason.
Don't you let those other boys fool you. Gotta love that Afro hairdo.
It's not lost on people that the original song is not just about generally relaxing and taking it easy, but that it's also about Corinne Bailey Rae encouraging black girls in particular to allow themselves to be themselves, to tell them that they shouldn't have to worry about what society tells them to be, and that they should allow themselves to be vulnerable and true to themselves. And while it might not have been the intention of Mitt Romney here, it is a little weird for a white guy to be singing these lines.
Don't you let those other boys fool you. Gotta love that Afro hairdo.
Because he didn't change any of the lines from the original, the perspective kinda changes in a weird way. Instead of coming across as a wise but empathetic person who knows what it feels like to be in the shoes of her audience, it sort of feels like a skeevy guy who's just coming in and saying these things for reasons that you don't exactly understand, but that makes you feel a little uncomfortable regardless. Like, why are you asking me to let my hair down, sir? You don't have hair to let down. It's worth mentioning that Corinne herself is actually happy with the song gaining interest with people once again over the cover, and also that Mitt Romney apologized for overlooking the significance of the song. I sort of imagine he's been spending the past few months watching the rise of the song with absolute dread, going, why the fuck did I do this, over and over again like a character in a TV show who made a white lie that got way out of hand and they have to deal with the consequences of it now. Even with all that though, it's tough to ignore the subtext of a white man covering a song with messages for black girls. It's not the most egregious thing ever in this particular case, but it's at least something that should be considered, especially since the original really did mean a lot to people back in the day. To me, this problem overshadows everything else that people have to complain about the song, which is sort of a relief to me because I honestly kinda like the rest of it. I definitely wouldn't take it over the original, but for what it's worth, it honestly doesn't sound all that bad. The calm, summery vibe of the original is translated really well to the cover, shifting from acoustic guitar, horns, and natural percussion to spacey synths, twinkling synths, and a drum machine that is more hectic but still understated. It helps that Mitt Romney sells his performance quite well too, his lazy but passionate voice really complementing the vibe. And yes, I don't even mind the final part of the song.
Girl, put your records on.
I don't know what it is about it, but something about that bit screams TikTok trend to me, and that's honestly not as much a damning criticism of it as you might think. Once again, the whole controversy with the song really casts a large shadow over everything else about it, good and bad, and I'm definitely going to follow Mitt Romney's request to stream the original instead of this, but quite honestly, I don't get the disdain for it otherwise.
I got my peaches out in Georgia. Oh yeah, shit. I get my weed from California. That's that shit. I took my chick up to the north, yeah. Badass bitch. I get my light right from the source, yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Justin's Justice era has felt really weird, largely because I feel like we haven't quite gotten over his previous album rollout just yet. It sort of feels like Justin realized very quickly after Changes came out that nobody liked that direction for him, so he rushed to clean up his image so quickly that we didn't even realize he was trying to do it until right before the newest album actually came out. As a result, Justin hasn't quite gotten the stink off of him yet, so even if this album was amazing, it just wouldn't have worked. Case in point, this song is probably fine, but I just can't help but smell the stench of everything else Justin has put out in the past year and a half. It doesn't help that the chorus is completely embarrassing.
I got my peaches out in Georgia. Oh yeah, shit. I get my weed from California. That's that shit. I took my chick up to the north, yeah. Badass bitch. I get my light right from the source, yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Like, I'm not sure if there's any real problem with it, but is it really the right move to brag about getting your weed from California as a white man singing on an R&B song? At the very least, Justin decided to feature both Daniel Caesar and Giveon on this song. I'm guessing they're mainly here to lend Justin credibility, but I definitely can't complain about them getting a #1 hit.
Sometimes all I think about is you. Late nights in the middle of June. He waves been faking me out. Can't make you happier now.
For the record, I have absolutely no stakes in Glass Animals. As far as I'm aware, they're one of those bands who several of my artist and non-music friends are super into, like Caravan Palace or Mystery Skulls or Studio Killers before Jenny became a TikTok hit. I've never really listened to their music before, but I've seen their name floating around for a while now, so it's cool to see them get an actual hit song. As for the song itself, I saw this song being kinda contentious within the community when it first charted, and I'm not really sure why. I assume it's a case of beloved band gets a hit with their worst song, but honestly I have no idea. For what it's worth, the song itself is perfectly fine to me. Sure, the chorus melody is kinda funky, but I don't know, I enjoy it. It's quite pleasant. The song itself doesn't really leave a huge impression on me overall, but I feel like it's the kind of song that would be kinda hard for me to get sick of if I heard it on the radio a bunch. Whichever side of the fence you're on though, I'm sure you'll agree when I say that Jenny should have been the big hit instead of this. It even has a Kim Petras remix now. What's not to like?
Yeah. I'm making a change today. The liquor been taking the pain away. I heard you was giving your chain away. That's kinda like giving your fame away. What's wrong with you?
I'm inclined to say that this is Drake's first good hip-hop song in a while, but is it just me or is this song kinda exhausting to listen to? Like, not in the usual existentially dreadful kind of way, but like, it's physically taxing to listen to. It's something about this beat combined with Drake's delivery. Like, it's all so high in the mix, you know? Like, the beat's mainly driven by the synth line, which is quite interesting on its own, but it remains quite high the entire way through. And for some reason, Drake's tone of voice is a lot higher than it usually is. And combined with the fact that his flow is quite contentious and breathless for a lot of the song, it feels like this top-heavy wall of noise that feels like this constant dull headache. You know how people say that Drake's earlier songs had really brilliant production because his producers made these really moody, low-end, bass-heavy beats for Drake's clear, sharp voice to cut through like fog lights? It feels like this time, Drake and his producers just completely forgot about that strategy. That's just an interesting observation I have about the song. Otherwise, I have literally nothing else to say. The longer Bruno Mars stayed away from releasing music, the more I wondered how on earth he was going to come back after running out of decades to pay homage to and losing the charm he once had. Turns out that going backwards to the days of Stevie Wonder and Soul Train and bringing Anderson .Paak along for the ride absolutely did the trick. This is just beautiful. Bruno still knows his shit, and the idea that he hasn't tackled the sound until now feels preposterous, especially now that I know what it sounds like. The instrumental is so immaculately produced. Everything absolutely glistens in the warm sunlight as Bruno and Anderson absolutely sell the hell out of their performances. This is the smoothest, most classic kind of lovemaking jam that makes me feel so fuzzy inside. I'm so excited that this is just the lead single of an entire collaboration album too. I've never really gotten into Anderson .Paak's discography, but I've been aware of him for a while and he just seems like the greatest guy. Look at those teeth. You can't deny those teeth. I do hope you get to see him shine on the rest of the project even more, but either way, I'm really pumped to see what else these two have in store for us.
De una vez por todas, soy más fuerte sola.
This might not sound like much of a big claim, but I say this with as much weight as I would if I were saying this about a Billie Eilish song or a Taylor Swift song or a Leo Yeri song or whatever. This is the best song Selena Gomez has ever made. I haven't listened to any of her projects before Rare, so I'm not the most qualified person to say that, but I'm still 100% confident that I'm right. De Una Vez was released at the start of the year as a lead single for her first Spanish project, Revelacion. Selena expressed interest in making a Spanish record all the way back in 2011 when she was still making music with The Scene, and that passion really shows throughout this record, and especially with this song in particular. Lyrically, it sort of works as a follow-up to Lose You to Love Me, where she declares that she can finally move on from her ex-lover and the hurt that they left her behind with. She trades the emotional balladry of her kiss-off with a melancholic but warm atmosphere of healing and contentment, and it makes me feel so warm and fuzzy inside. The song truly sounds and feels like what the lyrics are trying to convey. There's a nature of sadness and tragedy that forms the foundation of the song, but Selena ultimately builds up the song to be as warm, as comforting as it can possibly be, and by the time the final chorus comes in, waves of calm and self-assured happiness wash over you, with the gentle touch of a summer morning, but the emotional weight of your entire life bringing you to that place of happiness that you deserve to be. And that's before the outro. This is Selena's best song to date, but the rest of the Revelacion EP is not far behind at all. I really recommend it.
I was just in the studio and I was writing some shit. And it was just so deep, like, why am I such a good writer?
You know I'm just a flight away. If you want it, you could take a private plane. A kilómetros estamos conectando. Y me prendes aunque no me estés tocando.
Holy shit, Kali Uchis has a hit song. And it's in Spanish. I've been aware of Kali ever since she got buzzed through her debut album Isolation, and I've been in love with her ever since. She has such a unique command on melodies, being able to magically string together melodic ideas that sound like they could never go together and somehow make them gorgeous. She has such a distinct and beautiful sound that you can instantly recognize, and I'm so happy to see her actually snag a hit song. Granted, I'm not proud to say that I actually hadn't listened to Sin Miedo, the Spanish language album that Kali released late last year, until Telepatía had already become a hit. It was on my radar, but I was really caught up in real life stuff by that time, so I didn't really get to listen to it until recently. I really recommend it though. Kali's creative energy is just as much something to behold on here as it is on Isolation, and Telepatía is just one of many great songs from that album. It just sounds pink, you know? It's warm, soft, inviting, sexy, comfortable, loving, everything you could ever want in a love song. I've been playing it on loop a lot recently because I just can't get enough of everything the song has to offer. All the beautiful melodies and production moments, as well as just how beautiful Kali's vocals are throughout the song. I'm really grateful that the charts have allowed me to fall in love with her all over again.
I work my whole life just to get right, just to be like, look at me, I'm never coming down.
I know that Blackpink don't quite have the stateside clout that BTS has, so a solo release from one of their members was never gonna do huge numbers right away, but man, this deserves its due. For those who somehow aren't aware, Rosé is one of the girls from Blackpink, and this isn't her leaving the band or anything, it's basically just a little side project from the band. Her groupmate Jennie released a solo song of her own way back in 2018, appropriately titled Solo.
Bitch, nothing solo.
It sure exists, doesn't it? This, on the other hand, this is real good.
My life's been magic, seems fantastic. I used to have a hole in the wall with a mattress. Funny when you want it, suddenly you have it. You find out that your goal's just plastic.
It's another one of those rags to fake riches songs where the narrator finds their way to the top, only to realize that being on top is lonely and unfulfilling. At this point, Justin Bieber has practically ruined this genre of song single-handedly, but with On the Ground, Rosé finds a way to tackle it in a way that really does tug on some heartstrings. I think the main strength of this song's content is that Rosé's main source of grief is just how much she's sacrificed to get to where she is today.
I work my whole life just to get right, just to be like, look at me, I'm never coming down.
That line especially hits hard for me. Not only does it show how she's devoted her entire being to finding success in this industry, but it shows how she got there partly to prove to people that she wasn't a failure. It's one of those lines that gets sadder and sadder the more you think about it. Who are these people that she's trying to prove wrong? Why did she want to prove them wrong so badly? Why were they so adamant about her failure? Did these people even exist at all? Was it all just in her head? What else did she sacrifice on her way to the top? It hits especially hard when you remember that Rosé is a K-pop artist. I don't want to overemphasize the working conditions of the K-pop industry too much, since it's not like they're the only music industry that treats their artists poorly. But the rigor of coming up in the industry, as well as maintaining your position in it, or even just existing, can't be ignored. Rosé even mentions in the song itself how the band's living conditions while they were trainees were really poor, and I don't even want to think about the stuff that they don't want to or can't mention. There are other thematic elements that round out the rest of the song, like how the pre-chorus and bridge allude to a particular person that she misses dearly, as well as the titular line about how she realized in the end that what she really needed was with her from the very start. They're really nice details that complete the song, but I feel like the song is strongest when it's leaning into the almost Shakespearean tragedy of her rise to the top.
I worked my whole life just to get right, just to be like, look at me, I'm never coming down.
The pre-chorus is absolutely heavenly. The melancholic acoustic guitar and the angelic synth work complement Rosé's heartbreaking lyrics and her ever-beautiful voice so lovingly. It's the sound of looking back on your life, your heart tinged by the bittersweet feeling of realizing that it wasn't quite what you hoped for, but also knowing that you at least understand it now. The build-up is such a gratifying experience that I don't even mind the drop at all.
It's on the ground. On the ground. Everything I need is on the ground.
I actually kind of love it in a weird way. It barely fits the song at all, but there's a sort of frenetic, chaotic energy to it that I almost have to begrudgingly respect. I still don't understand what it's really supposed to represent, but until I figure it out, I'm not gonna let it ruin the song for me. As of the recording of this video, On the Ground isn't really much of a hit in the States, and I doubt it's really gonna climb much further from here. But much like any major K-pop release, basically everyone else in the world is listening to it other than the States. That definitely makes it a hit in my books, but I do really hope that it gets bigger in the US, just so that I can see everyone else talking about it.
Good day in my mind, safe to take a step out, get some air now, let your edge out.
I love this song so much. I really do, you have no idea. I might need to save the critical analysis for another day on this one, cause this is really something special. This song feels like the embodiment of a lovely morning. The warm golden sun shining through your window gently waking you up, the cool morning breeze brushing past you as you open the door, the birds chirping in the rustling trees as you walk outside and bask in the beauty. I literally had a morning where this song was playing in my mind the very moment I woke up. But somehow this song feels melancholic, bittersweet. SZA sings about coming out of a rough time, someone haunting her memory as she tries to move on and enjoy her time in the present, trying to appreciate what she has today and trying to move past what she went through in the past. Good Days was released on Christmas Day last year, at the end of one of the most universally difficult and traumatic years modern society has been through. In a lot of worst and best list videos I watched at the end of 2020, most people didn't even want to spend too long lamenting on the horrors of the year, as we were already all too aware of them. In contrast to a year like 2016, where everybody felt the need to list every single bad thing that happened that year. It felt like 2020 truly was a tipping point of sorts, where it was such an awful year for everybody that the best that anybody could ask for was for things to just be better than last year. For life to at least be a little easier than the dark time we were all subjected to. We couldn't even be so bold to ask for good, lest fate punish us for being so greedy, so we just ask for things to be a little less awful. Perhaps it's no wonder that people would gravitate to a song about living in the calm of the storm, being surrounded by peace and serenity, but still being internally haunted by your past, yet trying and learning to move past it so that you can keep going, maintaining hope that good days will eventually come. I'm very glad that this is a hit.
And I know we weren't perfect, but I've never felt this way for no one.
As someone who's now 21 years old, I've been wondering, at what point does pop culture's nostalgia move on from what you grew up on to what people younger than you grew up on? I've been enjoying seeing the internet constantly reference things that I grew up on, like SpongeBob and iCarly in early 2010s YouTube videos for the past few years. But I knew for a fact that eventually, the next generation of teenagers will take over the zeitgeist and start referencing the things that they grew up on, which I was already too old to experience. It made me wonder what would be the first piece of media that would become a phenomenon, which I would be caught off guard by because I was too old to have been paying attention to it until it got so big I couldn't ignore it. Much like One Direction or That's So Raven or the Archies must have been to previous generations. I guess for me, the answer is High School Musical, the series. I guess it's not really fair since I grew up on the original, but still, you know? From what I can gather, the show's kind of a hot mess, but also most people watching it are well aware of that and enjoy it a lot anyway, which I can definitely respect. I mean, that's basically what iCarly was anyway. This is relevant mainly because aside from Olivia Rodrigo being the Gabriella of the show, Driver's License received a huge boost of hype because the song is speculated to be about the breakup of her and her co-star on the show, who are rumored to have been dating. As you might have guessed, I have no stakes on this whatsoever, especially since I'm not entirely sure if this relationship even happened in the first place. The song doesn't really confirm anything either, since it turns out that the two main lines that allude to her ex and the girl he's been seeing were actually changed from the original lines.
And you're probably with that brunette girl, the one I always thought about. And I don't believe you when you say I did nothing wrong.
In any case, they definitely helped propel the song to its unprecedented success, but it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, this would have become a hit anyway because Olivia really captured something with this song.
Guess you didn't mean what you wrote in that song about me. 'Cause you said forever, now I drive alone past your street.
A lot of people compared Driver's License and Olivia herself to Lorde and Billie Eilish, for no good reason other than that she's a teenager making a sad song. But even with that narrow-minded comparison, they still come very close to understanding why this song is so powerful. Olivia captures the bursting, raging feelings of teenage melodrama so well and completely immerses you in it. Your teenage years are such a magical, difficult, special, and tumultuous time. Whether you're starting to find yourself and learning about everything in the world, all of its treasures and its horrors, and you feel everything. As you get older, it can be easy to forget how difficult it can be for teenagers to go through what you've already been through so many times. Breakups, exams, conflicts, losses. It can be hard for you to remember what it felt like to go through those things for the first time. Driver's License captures so vividly what it feels like to go through an experience like that at that point in your life. To learn how to come to terms with the one you love not loving you back anymore. To work so hard for something that you were so excited to have that you'll never get to have. To work through something that everyone else has been through so many times that they're sick of seeing you still going through it. To be haunted by the memories of the good times you had, and to learn how difficult it is to leave them behind and move on. Even if you can move past all that at the end of the day, it doesn't erase how it feels to go through all of it. Olivia not only has the ability to comprehend the situation and articulate her feelings, but she's able to do it without downplaying the intensity of these overwhelming emotions. Olivia is apparently really inspired by Taylor Swift, and if Olivia is an example of a teenager growing up on Taylor's evocative and brilliant songwriting and artistry, then I think we'll be getting a lot of great music from the next generation of artists. I'm really looking forward to that album. And with that, we come to the end of the first edition of Songs of Interest. This format isn't set in stone just yet, but hopefully y'all enjoy what I have so far. I'll see if I need to retool anything for this series, but I'm open to whatever input you might have in the meantime. Before you go, here's my ranking of the Billboard Top 20 for the first week of spring so that I can fulfill the promise of the title.
Burn away our carbon beam, knock your legs off.
We'll see what's about to happen next, okay?
Ain't nobody got to go crazy.
I got sins on my mind and some M's.
You broke me for
Cause you're mine still.
Back in blood. Brrr, brrr.
switching in positions for you.
Calling my phone.
I think therefore I am.
Baby, I am not your dad.
What you know about love?
30 for 35.
Don't say that. Shut your trap.
I know that's right.
Red lights, stop signs.
Do a leap with the baby.
As you can see from this selection of songs, I'm sure you can tell why I decided to change up the format. Anyways, that's all I have for you. Until next time.
Yeah, you said forever, now I drive alone past your street. So